We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Wednesday morning edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day, and I think you can figure it out. I am pretty fired up. Tuesday night, I'll be transparent. I thought it was as good of a night of college hoops as we have had all year. March is feeling extra Marchy right now. Okay, so it was an awesome night. We got a lot to react to. First of all, BYU-Iowa State. Did not think we'd be opening the show with this, but this was maybe the game of the year in college basketball. Double overtime win for BYU. They've won 7 straight. To quote Deion Sanders, I've told you BYU is coming. Well, guess what? BYU is here. They are playing some elite basketball. And I got some stats that I think will even back it up even further. From there, we'll get to some other results, bubble-ish stuff. Tuesday night, we had North Carolina and Arkansas both picking up what I think were crucial wins. Every time you want to doubt John Calipari, he rises up from the grave. North Carolina kind of very much the same. We'll hit on some of the other bubble results. Georgia and Texas all of a sudden are alive. The 13, 14-bit SEC is alive, so we'll discuss that. We'll get to some other results. Indiana, probably the big bubble loser. Kentucky on senior night. Number 1 Auburn loses. And then, oh, by the way, may even have an update on 5-star forward Nate Ament, who maybe that recruitment is taking a twist as he gets set to make his commitment on April 1st. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you're subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We surpassed 50,000 subscribers earlier this month. 51 is in sight, and I can't wait. I think we can get to 60, 65 before the end of the NCAA tournament, but we cannot do it without your support. By the way, if you're hesitant to subscribe, just know we talk portal, we talk NBA drafts. Like the hoops ain't stopping anytime soon, so make sure you're subscribed. Also, you can find us on Apple, Spotify as well. One more thing before we get to BetUS, I should mention, we are now, under 2 weeks until we have a bracket. Our official Torres bracket t-shirt, the shirt that you're going to want to wear on day 1 of the NCAA tournament, marches for day drinking. There's nothing else to say. This is the perfect t-shirt for the opening round of the NCAA tournament. You're with your buddies, you're with your friends, you're grabbing some beers, you're maybe in the sports book doing whatever. Make sure to grab your March is for day drinking t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. This is the must-have. We have limited supplies, so make sure to grab them now. By the way, you can support the show by grabbing our Marches for Day Drinking t-shirt. Speaking of support for the show, listen, it's March, and you know what that means. Our friends, our partners, our buddies, BetUS and BetUS Sportsbook are back as the official March sponsor of the Aaron Torres Pod. Listen, we worked with BetUS last year. They are the best. We love working with them. We love what they're about. We're going to be in San Antonio for the Final Four on behalf of BetUS Sportsbook. And here's the cool part. Not only are they good people, not only is it a great product, but here's the best part. They are offering you just an absurd offer for March of 2025. Here is that offer. This is what you need to know. BetUS, incredible offer. Okay, so all you got to do, go to the BetUS Sportsbook. How about this? For first-time depositors, you get a 150% deposit match, 150% deposit match on your first deposit. So in other words, you put in 100, they're going to give you 100 for 50 for free to play with. Now, you're not going to lose it because you're going to take Torres' betting advice, although Tuesday night was not very good. But here's the crazy part. If you lose the first deposit, guess what? The second deposit, they give you a 125% deposit match. And if you lose all that, third deposit, 125% deposit match as well. So we're talking about 1, 2, 3 deposits, deposit match of 150 on the first one, 125 on the second one, 125 on the third one. And I don't know what else to say other than there is no better deal than that in all of sports betting right now. So we very much appreciate BetUS's support. And we appreciate them taking us all the way through the NCAA tournament and beyond. Again, we'll be in San Antonio on behalf of BetUS Sportsbook. By the way, I should mention, to take advantage of that offer, this is what you got to do. Click the link. We'll have it in the show description, in the show bio, and use the promo code YouTube150. That's how you take advantage of that. So again, click the link. YouTube150 is the promo code. We appreciate BetUS. With that said, it was just an insane Tuesday night. It was maybe, in my opinion, the best night of college basketball all year. There is no more time to waste. So why are we wasting it? Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day. I'll tell you this, man. Listen, I don't know what I thought we were going to be leading today's show with. And by the way, on a night where you'd think that Auburn losing as the number one team in the country might be the story of the evening, I know the story of the evening came in beautiful Ames, Iowa. Okay, so Iowa State hosting BYU. This was a top 25 matchup, so it's not as though this game completely came off the radar, but it's been really interesting. Iowa State, to their credit, had a great win over Arizona over the weekend, and those pesky little BYU Cougars, I've been trying to tell you about them. I've been trying to tell you how good they are, that they're coming, that they're on their way. But the crazy thing is, even BYU fans were admitting, like earlier in the week when I kind of said after the West Virginia win on Saturday, this is the team that nobody wants to face. Even BYU fans said, like, look, Torres, let's get through this Iowa State game. That is going to show us where we are, how much work we have to do, and how we match up truly with the elite of the elite of the elite in this conference. We beat Kansas at home. That was awesome. Go on the road and beat Arizona by 1. But what's going to happen at Iowa State? They're playing well, preseason top 10 team. Well, we got our answer resoundingly on Tuesday night in what might have been the game of the year. Wasn't always pretty for BYU. What was it, 29 turnovers in general? But it does not matter because they get the double overtime 88-85 win. This game was bananas, okay? So this game was bananas. So let's go ahead and dive into it. First of all, a little bit of a slow start, but I think what kind of jumped out to me was that BYU is in control late first half into the second half. Take control late in the first half. I was flipping channels because there was a million games on, eating a little dinner, whatever, flip it back. They're up 20 plus points in the second half. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the statement game of all statement games. They're going to win by 100. They're unbelievable. They're the best team. Oh my God, they're unbelievable. Then they turn the ball over a few times. Then Iowa State makes a few shots. Then all of a sudden you look up and it is tied. Iowa State comes back from a 21-point deficit to Joshua Jefferson free throws right before the end of regulation, send it into overtime. And then we get another overtime where BYU ultimately wins, okay? Listen, I could break this game down minute by minute, frame by frame, whatever. All you need to know is if you miss this, go find the highlights somewhere. Stay on YouTube, stay on this channel. When this show's done, go find the highlights because it is unbelievable, the competitiveness of this game, the fire of this game, the back and forth of this game, the emotional swings of this game. I mean, it's like, I'm getting PTSD just thinking about it. There was a Keba Keita chase down block that was like one of the best plays I've seen all year in college basketball. Huge shot making, BYU, Iowa State. And I think the thing that just stood out in this game, by the end, the announcers, I think it was Chris Spatola was maybe the, not the play-by-play, but the color commentator. And he said, he's like, these guys are done. They have nothing left. And it really, to me, felt like an NCAA tournament game, a Sweet 16 game, an Elite 8 game, where there's two teams that, you didn't know what you were expecting coming in, but you weren't expecting that. And then you end up getting one of the great games of the season as, again, BYU goes on the road and wins at Iowa State. And so, listen, I could break it down minute by minute, but what you need to know, listen, I have been telling you for weeks that BYU is coming, okay? And listen, I understand there was trepidation early in the year, first-year head coach. What does it all mean? But even in early Big 12 play when this team was quote-unquote struggling, I mean, they were losing to good teams by small margins. 5-point loss at home to Texas Tech. We now know Texas Tech's a pretty darn good team. 4-point loss on the road at TCU, 1-point loss to your rival. And I really felt like that Baylor game about 2.5 weeks ago was really the turning point. Or I guess it was more now, maybe a month and a half ago. And then even the first Arizona game in the Marriott Center, Arizona won, but it was this incredible game, and you could see this coming. We've talked about the lineup changes. We've talked about going more veteran heavy, but Kevin Young is figuring this out on the fly. And right now, there is no doubt that BYU is pretty much the hottest team anywhere in college basketball. Houston might have a little bit of a longer winning streak. Duke might be this, whatever. Tell me you want to see BYU in your bracket right now, okay? So BYU, producer Matt, pop up the tweet from our Torres on BYU page. And by the way, shout out to Minty, who runs our Torres on BYU page. He was on top of this game on Tuesday night. But this stat to me is just unbelievable. The last 7 games, so BYU's on a 7-game winning streak right now, okay? I think I probably should have mentioned that. If I didn't, shame on me. It's not like they're playing, nobody you. It's not like they're playing, by the way, shout out to Doug Gottlieb, my guy there. It wasn't a knock on him. But, I just bring it up because you look at this 7-game win streak, and again, I don't know what else there is to say other than that they're beating some of the best teams in college basketball. Okay, listen, look at this resume in this 7-game stretch. Again, this is per Cougar Stats on our Torres on BYU page. If you're a BYU fan, I know a lot of you are going to see this video. Make sure to follow Torres on BYU. But in the 7 games, 5 quad 1 wins, okay? Something that's not on this sheet. I think a minimum of 4 or 5 of them are against tournament teams. You beat West Virginia at home the other night. You obviously beat Kansas in a game that Kansas, just got obliterated by the Cougars. You have a second win over West Virginia, who is very much in the tournament, okay? So 2 wins over West Virginia, a win over Kansas, that big win over Arizona at Arizona. And again, people want to say, oh, it was a fluke. Oh, it was this. Oh, there was a bad foul call. No. You scored 96 points at the McHale Center. You easily deserved that game. It did not come down to one call, even if it wasn't a great call. And then I'll say this, even the Arizona State game, not a great win on paper, but remember, they were coming off of 2 huge wins, Kansas and at Arizona. You're sitting in a hotel for 3 days, and it doesn't really matter because you come out and obliterate Arizona State as well. So last 7 games, the 7-game winning streak, 5 quad 1 wins, 3 against ranked teams. And then it goes without saying, number 19, Arizona in Tucson, Iowa State in Ames. And you see it right there. The third biggest win the third biggest margin of victory Kansas has allowed in 125 years. So it's unbelievable. And the only thing I would really add with BYU, the only thing that I can think to add is what we talked about after I went to Provo a few weeks ago. I think everybody knows by now. I was in Provo for a few days for that Kansas BYU game. And the one thing I'll say is, I don't get to go on the road as much as I would like. I'm privileged, get to do Fox Sports Radio every weekend. So obviously I'm in the radio studio on Saturday nights. So I don't get to as many games as I would love to during the season. But I bring it up because I try to get out because you want to meet with people. You want to talk to staff. And the one thing I will say, having been in Provo that week for the BYU Kansas game, whatever it was, 2.5 weeks ago, the one thing I said it at the time, and I'll say it again, this BYU program, they believe that they are a rocket ship headed to the moon, okay? Listen, I understand there are certain programs through the years that have a ceiling that this, that, whatever. Well, guess what? BYU now doesn't feel like, oh, just because we haven't done this in this long doesn't mean we can't do this going forward. The term that Kevin Young, their coach, likes to use, this isn't a hypothetical. I think that's more in reference to his background. I've coached Kevin Durant. I've coached Devin Booker. I was in the NBA. But this isn't hypothetical for BYU. They are now in the Big 12. They now have resources that can match anybody in that league. And I think as importantly, and I said this at the time, they really have alignment across that university. I saw this kind of random, but a few days ago, I saw my buddy Josh Pate, who, he's the godfather of YouTube college football coverage. But Josh Pate said something to the effect of, it doesn't matter, how many, basically there's a lot of schools with a lot of money, a lot of resources, a general manager or this, that. But if everybody isn't rowing in the same direction on how to allocate those resources, it doesn't matter. Well, that applies to college football, but that applies to college basketball as well. And I look at BYU and being there, and everybody's rowing in the same direction. The administration gives the program what they need, but isn't overbearing as best I could tell. I know there's a new AD coming in, so you never know. But I just bring it up because I think there's a lot of schools that have resources, are in a power conference, but behind the scenes, it's a total mess. And that is not the case at BYU. Everybody's rowing in the same direction. And so I said it at the time, they are a program that feels like, hey, why can't we win the Big 12? Why can't we go deep into the tournament? Why can't we be an April team? An April team, of course, being one that makes the Final Four, which is generally played in April, even if we call it March Madness. And so they said that to me when I was there, like, why not us? We're in the Big 12 now. We're in a power conference. We have great resources. We have great support from the administration. Why not us? Well, guess what? To quote, as I said to lead the show, to quote Deion Sanders, to quote Coach Prime, BYU's coming, baby, and you better be ready, because to me, I think they're just going to be a horror to see in your bracket, and I said that on Sunday's show. You know how as a program that you've arrived? When other fan bases are tweeting, I don't want to see that team at all. It's one thing for a guy in the media, Torres, you're just kissing butt, whatever. I'm not. I don't say what I don't mean. But what I would also say is, listen, I'm a UConn alum. I had my UConn people, like, I saw them tweeting. If we're in that 8-9 range, we do not want BYU. Now, I think BYU might end up being much better than an 8 seed when it's all said and done, but they were like, we do not want that team. I saw Jason Shear, who covers Arizona, does a great job. One of my guys, love Jason Shear, tweeted something like, good luck to the 8-9 team that draws BYU. So this team is coming. They're on the rise, and as we all know, it ain't slowing down. Some of the best players on the court on Wednesday night, Tuesday night, in theory, could be back. Dallin Hall was unbelievable, has another year of eligibility. Richie Saunders was unbelievable, has another year of eligibility. And we know that recruiting class is taking a backseat to nobody. So unbelievable game for BYU, unbelievable night, and we're just getting started. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the bubble. We'll talk about Arkansas. We'll talk about North Carolina, everything else that happened in the world of college hoops. And oh, by the way, some very interesting recruiting news that we'll get to a little bit later in the show. Appreciate everybody's support. Drop your comments. We'll get to some comments in the chat as well. Quick break. Be right back.
What's up, everybody? It's AT, and listen, long day of podcasting, sometimes don't always look the best. So look at this. It's a little bit not great, okay? Well, here is the great news. The great people at Filebox said, Torres, you're a professional. You just got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. You need to look better. And so they sent me a couple awesome things. I want to pull them out for you right now. This is all from the winter collection, by the way. Spring collection is coming out. We got the vest, very, very, very nice. The sweater, very professional for when I go to professional events. We got these nice blue jeans. I think the question now everybody's asking is, Torres, how do you actually look when you put that stuff on? Let's find out. Well, what do you think? Sweater fits perfectly. Great for all occasions. When I go to games, when I go out to a dinner, warm weather, cool weather, it's perfect. Speaking of perfect, these jeans are phenomenal. Great for games, great for social events. Oh, by the way, a little bit stretchy if those New Year's resolutions aren't going on as planned. Really quickly, we got to try out. Let's try out the vest. It fits perfectly. Not a surprise. So here's the deal. If you want to look as good as Torres, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to Fioboc.com. That's F-I-O-B-O-C. Fioboc.com. And here's the best part. For listeners to the Aaron Torres pod, you get 20% off with code Torres20 at checkout. We also put a referral link in all of our YouTube videos. Thank you to Fioboc. By the way, make sure you're following them on social media at F-I-O-B-O-C. Thank you to Fioboc. You want to look as good as Torres, check them out. Again, promo code Torres.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So, tell you what, there's a lot to get to from the rest of the world of college hoops on Tuesday night. What a game. What a night. What a moment. And I'll tell you what, BYU fans, they stayed up late watching their Cougars get the win in Ames. You know what else? You know what other fan base was up late? How about those Arkansas Razorbacks fans? That's right. There was a big pig invasion late into the night in Nashville that we got to go ahead and break down. And this is really where kind of the bubble conversation comes into our coverage here on the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. So listen, Arkansas, you don't need me to tell you, Saturday was a debacle, right? And so, again, you don't need me to tell you, but Arkansas did everything right in February to put themselves in position to get into the NCAA tournament. Tough start to the season, whatever. We all know about that. Then you win at Kentucky, you win at Texas, you beat Missouri at home, and everybody's feeling good. Then we got what could only be described as just the debacle of all debacles on Saturday afternoon at South Carolina. Again, you don't need me to tell you. You don't need me to this. You don't need me to that. But 14 points in the first half is not good. Well, I bring it up why I want to start the conversation about Vanderbilt and Arkansas. And where I want to start it is with the comments that we had from John Calipari after the South Carolina game, because I think it was easy to criticize Coach Cal. As it turns out, he was dead right. Producer Matt, give me 1/2 second until we get to that sound, because I got to tell you, there is nothing else to say other than you talk about a signature win for the Arkansas Razorbacks. They go on the road. They beat Vandy 90-77. I'm all over the place to start this segment, but guess what? Arkansas has been all over the place in the month of February and March, but they are playing again really good basketball, and they get a win in a really tough place. Again, 90-77, of course, the win over Vanderbilt, a Vanderbilt team, by the way, that, of course, has already picked up home wins against Kentucky, home wins against Tennessee, etc. And so, listen, again, we could break things down. We'll discuss this game momentarily, but I think the best place to start is actually with Saturday, because Saturday, there's no other way to put it. It was a debacle. It was an embarrassment. It was statistically one of the worst games in Arkansas basketball history, okay? And so after the game, John Calipari made some very interesting comments that I think ruffled a lot of feathers, maybe not so much with Arkansas fans, but with some other fans. Producer Matt, play the tape from Saturday afternoon.
When you go 0 for 17, shouldn't win a game. Someone got to make a shot. You were 0 for 17, you're not going to be in a good game. I told them 8 games like we played, you were due for a dud. It was a dud. Move on. I said, now, what they did to us, they exploited us near the basket, which my guess is every team will try to do now. So we got to figure that out. But I said,
so that was Coach Cal on Saturday after the South Carolina game. I said it on Sunday. I apologize for the video quality. I don't know what was going on there. But we talked about this on Sunday's show, okay? Because when Cal said that, there were a lot of people who criticized him. How do you have one of the worst losses in program history, one of the worst losses since you've joined the SEC, and you just brush it off and say, we've played a lot of high-leverage games, we were due for a dud, okay? But if you remember Sunday's show, I kind of defended Cal, and I got a lot of heat in the comments. Oh, Torres, you will never say anything bad about Cal. I believe the word the kids use is glaze. You're glazing Cal, blah, blah. And what did I say at the time? I said, look, it's not a great performance. But I think Cal's mindset is actually right. First of all, I know it's easy to criticize Coach Cal. I know it's easy to say that whatever, whatever. Blame whatever. We know what the narratives are. But what did I say? I said 2 things. One, and this wasn't part of the video, but he said, burn the tape. I said, I agree. You just got to move on and pretend it didn't happen. But the other thing, and here's the truth, is that what I said at the time was he's right. They did play 8 really high leverage games from February 1st through the South Carolina game. If you go back and look, Arkansas, from February 1st when they went to Kentucky through the South Carolina game, 8 games. They were 5-3. The only 3 losses, as we know and as we've discussed, Alabama at home, at Texas A&M, at Auburn. And so basically you played, and by the way, every single game, even the losses were close. They were competitive. You had a chance to win. And those 3 losses are on top of the emotion of going to Kentucky, the emotion of going to Texas, the emotion of beating Missouri, the emotion of beating Texas a second time at home. And so I only bring it up to say that, yeah, they kind of were due for a dud. They hadn't played a really bad game in probably 2 months. And oh, by the way, early tip-off against South Carolina, last place team. I'm not making any excuse, but what I said was everybody has had bad games. Auburn wasn't good against Texas A&M on Tuesday night. I promise you that. Alabama lost by double figures at home to Ole Miss. Everybody has had moments this season. And so I said, it's not that big of a deal as long as you don't let one loss become more than one. Well, to Arkansas's credit, they did not with what I would argue, I can't say it's a better performance than, say, the Kentucky game a few weeks ago. But given that you're without Adu Thero still, and that's another conversation that I don't even know where I want to go with that one, like that was as good of a performance as you've had. 90 points. You did it on the road in a place that, again, a lot of teams have lost throughout the season. Missouri just lost there this weekend. Tennessee lost there. Kentucky lost there. I would add this too. Vandy, outside of Auburn coming into Tuesday, probably the hottest team in the SEC. Vandy had won 4 straight games against ranked opponents coming into Tuesday night. 4 straight wins over ranked opponents. They are playing really good basketball, and Arkansas gets the win. Obviously, the highlight, Trevin Brazil. Listen, you got to give credit where it's due, man. This is a guy that's taken, first of all, just an emotional 3 years in Fayetteville, looking like a lottery pick under Eric Musselman in 2022. He gets hurt, comes back. Last year, he's clearly not the same player. And it's been up and down under Coach Cal, and it's not his fault. It's not Coach Cal's fault. It's been up and down. And I know that there were a lot of Arkansas fans that were frustrated with him. Well, all I'll say is and by the way, justifiably, not blaming the fans, but to his credit, what did he have? 16 points, 13 rebounds, something like that. DJ Wagner, 14 points in the second half. So this was, in my opinion, given everything, I think you can argue it's as good of a performance as they've had all year. I think what's also interesting for Arkansas is all of a sudden, a couple of those wins that they had earlier in the year, they're starting to look better and better as the season goes on. Like they beat Georgia, their first SEC win of the season. Georgia all of a sudden can't lose. We're going to talk about Georgia in a minute. Georgia's on a 3-game winning streak. I mean, is Georgia the hottest team in the SEC right now? They might be. Just beat Florida last week. Beat Texas over the weekend. Beat South Carolina on Tuesday. That win is now getting better. Texas, by the way, out of nowhere, beat Mississippi State. That win's getting better. So you don't want to put the cart before the horse. But listen, I think Arkansas fans have to feel like they're in really good shape for the NCAA tournament, because here's why. I understand that the 18 and 12 record right now. Listen, it's not the best record in college basketball. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that there weren't some frustrating losses at LSU, Oklahoma at home, the game against South Carolina on Saturday. But here's the bottom line. And this is kind of the thing that happens this time of year. When people ask me about tournament resumes, right? Everybody's asking me, Torres, what does my team have to do? What about this? What about that? And I always say, well, it's not just what you're doing. It's you compared to the rest of the field. And for Arkansas, here's where they have to feel good. 5 quad 1 wins after Tuesday night. They have the win at Vandy. They have the win at Kentucky. They have the win at Texas. They have a win at home over Missouri. And so, listen, 18 and 12 doesn't sound great on paper. 5 quad 1 wins matters, okay? Look at the rest of the bubble. It's kind of a disaster. North Carolina, who we're going to talk about in a minute, I actually think they deserve some credit. You know how many quad 1 wins North Carolina has? 1. You know how many SMU has? 0. Xavier, who I think is actually playing really good basketball, 1 quad 1 win right now. That's your competition on the bubble. So listen, I don't want to sit here and say you're in and you're this and you're that. I do think beating Mississippi State on Saturday pretty much clinches it. And I think you go to the SEC tournament next week now playing for seeding. Don't beat Mississippi State. It gets a little bit interesting. But remember, on the bubble, it's not just you. It's what you've done relative to the competition. And you've taken a lot of losses. But guess what? This is where playing in the best league in the history of college basketball certainly helps. The committee understands how tough this league is night in and night out. And so, listen, man, I could go on and on, but I just want to give credit to Arkansas, man. That I really think, relative to everything, was about as good of a performance as you could have. And again, listen, don't lose to Mississippi State and leave it up to the hands of the committee. But I think if you get to 19 and 12, 5 quad 1 wins, I don't even know if Mississippi State would be a 6th. All I know is now you're talking about going to the SEC tournament. And again, I think you're playing for NCAA tournament seeding, not necessarily anything else. Really quickly, chat's a little bit quiet today, people. Let's get the chat bumping. Drop your comments, drop your thoughts on the last couple days, because it has been a crazy couple days in college hoops. But I'll tell you what. You know what we also got to do here? We got to keep the conversation going on the bubble. And I thought outside of Arkansas, there was one team that to me was a major winner. and that's North Carolina Tar Heels. And so listen, we've talked a lot about North Carolina over the course of the last couple of weeks, and I'll be real. Listen, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I didn't say the things that I said. And I've been pretty critical of North Carolina. Now, I don't know that I ever really thought they were going to fire Hubert Davis if they missed the NCAA tournament, but I thought it should be a conversation. I thought North Carolina, you shouldn't be missing the NCAA tournament 2 years in a row, 2 out of 3 years, which is what they were on track to do. Well, I bring it up because they have quietly been playing really good basketball and maybe played their best game of the season against Virginia Tech on Tuesday night. Virginia Tech is not good, but when you go on the road in league play and you're a brand like Carolina that brings in huge crowds every single, you get everybody's best shot, right? Just like Kentucky does in the SEC, just like Kansas does in the Big 12. You get everybody's best crowd, everybody's best shot. Well, credit Carolina because they had a nice little ho-hum 32-point win against Virginia Tech. And I'll say this, we just talked about the bubble with Arkansas. I think that North Carolina, for one obvious reason, should get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the NCAA tournament picture. Let's go ahead and explain. First of all, again, I don't want to overstate and oversell beating a bad Virginia Tech team. Okay, Virginia Tech is not good. And on top of it, they probably should be firing their coach. I saw Jeff Goodman report that Mike Young, their coach, is expected back next year. He's just going to get some more NIL funding. Listen, not the win that we're going to tell our grandkids about. We're not going to be telling our great-grandkids, sitting them on our lap, talking about, hey, 2025 UNC Virginia Tech. Let me tell you about that one. Okay, that's not going to happen. But at the same time, where I have to give North Carolina credit, North Carolina, again, I was very critical early, and you go back to early February. They lose at Clemson. Now, Clemson's not a bad team, but Clemson, when they lost to Clemson, they were 14-11 overall. And what we kept talking about at the time is that when you look at that loss to Clemson, what stood out and what was important was this. The back half of the schedule, outside of the final game of the season against Duke, which is, of course, this weekend, outside of that, here was the problem. You had a bunch of games that really could only hurt you and not help you. You had 6 games in a row against really bad teams, Miami, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, on and on. And what I said at the time was like, look, you may sit there and say, well, it'll be good to hit a soft spot of the schedule. The counter to that is the opposite. If you lose any of those games, it's going to crush your resume, and it's not going to help you to win any of them. And so I said, you basically have to go 6-0 going into Duke to even have a shot. And to North Carolina's credit, they haven't taken a bad loss in 3 weeks, and they are now in position to be in position against Duke. And so we'll see what happens against Duke. But I want to say this. I do believe that as we look at the bubble picture, I believe that North Carolina should be given the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the NCAA tournament, and let me explain why. It has nothing to do with branding. It has nothing to do with being a blue blood and send them to Dayton and they'll draw ratings and everybody will want to watch. That's not what this is about. What this is about is that North Carolina put together one of the single toughest out-of-conference resumes that I have ever seen. Now, they didn't get a lot of wins, and I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it and say, oh, my goodness, they should be a 7 seed or 3 seed. They play so hard. No, that's not what this is about. But what it is about is this, is that if you look at Carolina, look at the schedule that they put together. First Friday of the season, they go to Kansas. Now, we didn't know at the time that Kansas was going to stink, but Kansas was the preseason #1 team in the country. They went to Kansas in a true road game. They deserve credit for that. Then, by the way, they fly to Maui. You think, oh, we're going out to Hawaii, where Carolina will be in good shape. Round 2, you play some random top 15 team that we don't know if they're good or not. Oh, it was the Auburn Tigers. They're unbelievable. And they smacked you, but guess what? They pretty much smacked everybody all year long. Ask Alabama, ask Kentucky, ask Purdue, ask whoever. They destroy people. So you didn't know when you schedule Maui that Auburn was going to end up as the #1 seed in the NCAA tournament, probably the #1 overall seed. Oh, by the way, then you'll lose to Auburn. You go to the 3rd place game. You got to play Michigan State. Oh, Michigan State, Tom Izzo, he hasn't done anything in a while. Oh, they're going to win the Big Ten, and they're currently in the top 10 as well. So we're not even talking about through Thanksgiving yet. We haven't even hit Thanksgiving. You've already played Michigan State, Auburn, and on a neutral, and Kansas on the road. Then you come home. You get the SEC Big ACC Challenge. Well, at least it's at home. Who are you going to play? Oh, you played Alabama. Alabama's in position to potentially be a number 1 seed. Then a few weeks later, you get this little thing called the Jumpman Invitational. It's for all the Nike or all the Jumpman schools. And who are you going to get there? Oh, you got Florida. You got the Florida Gators, okay? And so listen to that schedule. By the way, you also played UCLA, the one quad 1 win that you have. So listen to that schedule, okay? Remember, there's only 4 number 1 seeds in an NCAA tournament bracket. There is a chance that North Carolina will have played a minimum of 5 games against them if Florida and Alabama end up with the 3rd and 4th number 1 seeds. Might not happen, but still, think about that. They played Auburn, who I think is going to be the number 1 overall seed. They played Alabama. They played Florida, all in the out-of-conference. Now they have 2 games against Duke, maybe a 3rd one, depending on how the ACC tournament bracket plays out. And so to me, if you are going to leave North Carolina out, and by the way, I think a Duke win puts them in, and we're working under the hypothetical that they don't take some terrible loss at the ACC tournament. Like, you lose to Miami. I guess Miami's not even in the ACC tournament this year. I guess, what is it? The bottom 3 don't even go to the ACC tournament. So, you lose to Notre Dame in the ACC tournament. We have to have a different conversation. But the counter to that is, I think if you don't embarrass yourself against Duke, and more importantly, you don't embarrass yourself in the ACC tournament, I do believe Carolina should be in, because I don't believe we should be punishing teams for going out of their way to schedule insane out-of-conference slates, okay? I think North Carolina, and I give Hubert Davis credit, I think he understands the brand that he is in charge of, and I think he understands the responsibility to play big games early in the year, not to duck, not to play a bunch of directional schools, not to not leave Chapel Hill. And so you look at what they did. They could have easily not gone to Maui. They could have played a couple home games, brought in a bunch of bad teams, destroyed them, and added a couple wins to their resume. They could have gotten a break in the ACC SEC challenge. Maybe they get, Arkansas that was struggling at the time, or LSU's not very good. I mean, there was a million teams they could have got. They got Alabama. And so I don't want to be in the business of punishing teams for scheduling insane out-of-conference slates. Now, listen, I think this becomes a moot conversation in 2 directions, depending on how the next week or so goes. If you beat Duke, I don't see the scenario where you're not in. That would be a great win. As we know, all of the losses would essentially be in quad 1 because, again, you played Florida, Alabama, Auburn, Michigan State, among others, at Kansas out of conference. I think if you beat Duke, it's hard to argue they shouldn't be in. I think even if you lose to Duke, you just can't take that bad loss at the ACC tournament. Again, I've been critical of Hubert Davis. I think a lot of it has been justified. I do believe listen, I don't generally believe that we should be rewarding mediocrity in the NCAA tournament, but I don't know that playing one of the toughest schedules we've ever seen and not having a ton of success against it is mediocrity. Conversely, I don't know that in ACC play, playing a bunch of bad teams and beating all of them is mediocrity. So North Carolina is certainly in an interesting spot. We will see what happens with them. A couple other bubble results of note. We'll be quick here. First of all, Georgia. Is Georgia the hottest team in college basketball? Like, is Georgia just never going to lose again? Again, I'm very conflicted here because I have been maybe a little critical of Mike White through the years. As I've said many times, may have called him mediocre Mike White a time or two. This guy's like the new John Wooden. Georgia just keeps on winning. I really thought this team was dead about 2 weeks ago. I mean, think about it. This was a team that at the time, 16-11 after they lost to Auburn. Now, losing to Auburn is no shame, but 16-11, and the next 3 games were Florida at home and then 2 road games in the toughest league in college basketball. Well, they've gone 3-0. They beat South Carolina on Tuesday night. Now, South Carolina isn't the greatest win that you could ever have, but conversely, like, we got to give them credit. Start to finish, they were kind of in control, and now all of a sudden, you look at them. 19-11, 7-10 in the SEC. I think they're probably in. You could argue the out-of-conference schedule wasn't great. They did beat St. John's, though. That is a big win that is carrying weight throughout the season. But I also think, like, it's kind of like Arkansas. Like, these wins matter, and these wins all look good in the computers. Florida at home is a monster win. Even Texas on the road, like, Texas, we're going to talk about in a minute, but like, credit where it's due. That was not an easy game, and you went ahead and got the win. So listen, with Georgia, again, I've been critical of Mike White. I get it. But I also got to call him, mediocre Mike White might be new age, unbeatable Mike White, because I just cannot believe how good this team has looked over the last couple games. They deserve a ton of credit for everything that they have done. Really quickly, also of note in the SEC, I thought this idea of 14 SEC tournament teams was dead. I thought, I thought basically if Georgia, Texas, and Arkansas lost on Tuesday night, I thought we could end up with 11, which would tie the record. So much to my surprise, Texas, which had been left for dead by everybody, including me, they went to Mississippi State and beat Mississippi State. Texas, another SEC win. They are now 17-13, 6-11 overall, and they had lost 6 of 7 coming into this one, 3 in a row, and they find a way to win at the hump. Okay, listen, we don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but Texas is an interesting team. Challenged themselves out of conference. They don't have a lot of great out-of-conference wins, but this is a team that played UConn in the out-of-conference. This is a team that played Ohio State in the out-of-conference. They played a couple other big games. Maybe this out-of-conference schedule wasn't as tough as I thought, but 17-13, they just picked up their 6th win in the SEC. I'll be real. I still think they have work to do. 17-13 plus Oklahoma this weekend, plus the SEC tournament. I think you got to beat Oklahoma and probably win a game in the SEC tournament. I mean, 14 losses is a lot. I don't care how tough the league is. 14 losses is a lot. I'll tell you this. Oklahoma actually plays on Wednesday night. They face Missouri at home. I don't think it's hyperbole to say the loser of Oklahoma, Texas is probably not going to. There's a chance neither of them does. But I think the loser of Oklahoma, Texas, it's hard for me to see the scenario where they're into the NCAA tournament. So it remains to be seen. Oklahoma is not very good right now. Not very good right now. Oklahoma, we'll see if them. They play Texas this weekend. Oklahoma plays tonight as well. Really quickly, bubble losers. I think the one that really stands out, and I feel bad because they're actually playing really good basketball and they played very tough in this game. The Indiana Hoosiers. So Indiana, we've talked about a lot. We know about the coaching search, all that. But what stands out about Indiana coming into this week is that they were a team that, despite the coaching search, was playing really well. We've talked about it. They've won 4 of their last 5. They won at Michigan State. They beat Purdue. And you kind of felt like they were going to win. They were going to be in position to make the NCAA tournament potentially. Now, what was tough was the schedule. We talked about it. I think it's totally unfair for any school from the East Coast to fly to the West in the final week of the regular season. By the way, I think it's unfair for the West Coast schools to fly East. UCLA was playing on a Monday night at Northwestern. They got to fly back, play this weekend. Then they got to come back next week for the Big Ten tournament. So I think the schedule makers have to change that. I think those 4 West Coast schools should be playing a round robin: Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC the final week of the regular season. I don't think it changes the fact, though, that Indiana, if they had won this game, it felt like was going to be in the NCAA tournament. They came into this one at 18-11 overall, all 11 wins in all 11 losses in quad 1. And this was one, if you win this game, I think it's hard to say that you're out. But they don't win this game. And I think the disappointing part was they were in position late. This was a game that late in the game, we are talking about at the under 6 minutes left. It was tied at 59 with 6 minutes left. Oregon makes all the plays from there. Oregon wins 73-64. Just a tough loss for Indiana because they were in position. They had a chance to win that one. Indiana closes against Ohio State. I think if you beat Ohio State, you should feel pretty good going into the Big Ten tournament. Probably, again, can't take a bad loss there. I do think this one probably would have punched the ticket. It wasn't meant to be. Just a couple other results from Tuesday night. We don't have to spend a ton of time on these. Number one team in the country lost. It was a good night when we're an hour into the show and we have not talked about the number one team in the country losing. The Auburn Tigers lose to Texas A&M. Hate to say it, think it's more about A&M. They needed to stop the bleeding. By the way, that was Torres' best bet. Shame on Torres on Tuesday night. But listen, A&M had to just stop the bleeding. They just did. They get the win. Good for them. Auburn, I thought they were above kind of the letdown after the Kentucky game, but you can kind of understand it, right? I mean, you saw the locker room videos. You saw the courtside videos. You saw the videos on the bus when Tennessee hits the buzzer beater for Auburn to clinch the outright regular season title. And so they then have to go on the road again. They don't get the win. I don't think it matters much from Auburn's side of things. I still think they're in position to probably get the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. I certainly think if they lose against Alabama this weekend, and then also on top of that, if they lose against Alabama, and then from there were to lose their opener in the SEC tournament, they'll still be a 1 seed. I think you could argue maybe Duke gets that number 1 overall seed. Probably even then, I still think it's tough just with the volume of quad 1 wins that Auburn has, but they're going to be the number 1 seed. They're going to be a number 1 seed. They're probably the number 1 seed overall, so I don't think it really matters. And then really quickly, just a solid senior night from the Kentucky Wildcats. I don't think there's a ton to get into from this game. LSU isn't very good. I love Matt McMahon. He's been on this show. I'm kind of surprised that they're bringing him back for another year. I think it's because his buyout is just enormous. And so they're doing the whole cliche, we'll give him more NIL money. Yeah, that's called rev share. Everybody's getting more NIL money next year. But credit Kentucky, it's been a tough week with the Jackson Robinson news, but they bounce back. They get the win on senior night. Kentucky, they close with Missouri on the road. That's going to be a tough one. But Kentucky playing well. I think the big thing from this game, the bench continues to get better, and I think that's going to be an interesting conversation as we get into the SEC tournament, into the NCAA tournament. All of a sudden, Colin Chandler is more confident. Ansley Almanor is playing well. Brandon Garrison's playing well. So it's very interesting to see what happens from here. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, interesting recruiting twist. Nate Ament, number 1 uncommitted player in America. He's supposed to commit later, end of this month, first week of April. Setting up new visits, and this is a big one. Coach Cal didn't just get a big win on the court, but off it as well. Quick break. Be right back.
What's up, everybody? It's AT, and listen, long day of podcasting. Sometimes don't always look the best. So look at this. It's a little bit not great, okay? Well, here is the great news. The great people at Firebox said, Torres, you're a professional. You just got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. You need to look better. And so they sent me a couple awesome things. I want to pull them out for you right now. This is all from the winter collection, by the way. Spring collection is coming out. We got the vest, very, very, very nice. The sweater, very professional for when I go to professional events. We got these nice blue jeans. I think the question now everybody's asking is, Torres, how do you actually look when you put that stuff on? Let's find out. Well, what do you think? Sweater fits perfectly. Great for all occasions. When I go to games, when I go out to a dinner, warm weather, cool weather, it's perfect. Speaking of perfect, these jeans are phenomenal. Great for games, great for social events. Oh, by the way, a little bit stretchy if those New Year's resolutions aren't going on as planned. Really quickly, we got to try out. Let's try out the vest. It fits perfectly. Not a surprise. So here's the deal. If you want to look as good as Torres, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to Fioboc.com. That's F-I-O-B-O-C. Fioboc.com. And here's the best part. For listeners to the Aaron Torres pod, you get 20% off with code Torres20 at checkout. We also put a referral link in all of our YouTube videos. Thank you to Fioboc. By the way, make sure you're following them on social media at Fioboc. Thank you to Fioboc. You want to look as good as Torres, check them out. Again, promo code Torres.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Gonna be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. Truly appreciate everybody's support. We have a nice live crowd, live audience today. Comment section is a little bit quiet. I guess Torres' takes aren't spicy enough, especially a day after, I said that a Cooper Flag type is coming back to college basketball. So maybe the takes aren't spicy enough today. I don't know. Either way, though, before we get to the final segment of the show, got to do it. I want to thank our friends. I want to thank our partners. I want to thank Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Okay, so I've told you all about Collie Puffs, but it is March. NCAA tournament is here. And you need that healthy snack, but also that delicious snack as well to get you through March, to fuel you in March. Well, my friends, you need Collie Puffs, which you can find at ColliePuffs.com. So I've told you Collie Puffs story. Joey, owner of Collie Puffs, big sports fan, loves this show. Hate to brag, love producer Matt's reels on Instagram. You can follow us on Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, by the way. But he loves the reels. He's a big sports fan. He was sitting on the couch one day, and he just kind of sat there and said, you know what? I'm turning into a fat, filthy, disgusting slob. Okay, he maybe didn't say it quite like that, but what he said was, I need a snack that is delicious, but darn it, I need something that is healthy as well, something healthy for my kids. They can bring it to school. They can eat it at home. He came up with Collie Puffs. Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Okay, so this is what you need to know about them. They're baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients, but the best part is they taste freaking delicious as well, okay? So for more information, you can try them out for yourself. All you got to do is visit caulipuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, caulipuffs.com. And you can also get them, how about this, on Amazon.com as well. Just go to Amazon.com, search Cauli Puffs, and you can find them there. Throw them in your cart, check out whatever else you're buying. I don't want to know what's in that cart, but the Cauli Puffs will be in there. You'll try them. You'll like them. Thank you to Cauli Puffs. All right, with that said, one more segment that I do want to go ahead and wrap the show on. We had a busy Tuesday night in college hoops, but I want to switch gears to a big piece of recruiting news off the court, and it involves the #1 high school player that is uncommitted in America, class of 2025, senior, enrolling in college next year, the guy you see on your screen right there, Nate Ament, okay? So we've talked about Nate Ament a ton on this channel and in the recruiting circles and stuff, but really interesting recruitment, okay? He was kind of a late bloomer. He did have a Duke offer early, but it wasn't until really last spring that the UConns and the Carolinas and the Louisvilles and the New Kentucky staff all came in. And really, it's been a long, winding recruitment. We talked about it all fall. He took 1 million visits in the fall. Texas, Notre Dame, whatever, blah, you go on down the list, Duke, Louisville, etc. Well, I bring it up because about, a week or so ago, he officially cut his list to 5. Now, the 5 was not surprising, at least the first 4. Louisville was on the list. Duke was on the list. That's not surprising. They have been perceived as the leaders from day one. Tennessee was on the list. They're in the mix. They've been in the mix from the beginning. Kentucky was on the list. Kentucky, not surprising because Kentucky really picked up their recruitment of Nate Ament after they lost out on Caleb Wilson. Well, I bring it up because that 5th team was certainly interesting, the Arkansas Razorbacks. But even when he dropped that top 5, there was some momentum for Arkansas. I said behind the scenes, it feels like they're making up a lot of ground. But I bring it up because all the old Coach Cal haters, all the Arkansas haters said, yeah, it's great that he made a top 5, but he's never visited Arkansas. And until he visits Arkansas, they're not a real legitimate candidate. Well, I bring it up because on Tuesday, just hours before Arkansas got arguably their most important win of the season, we find out that, Nate Ament is traveling to Fayetteville this weekend and will use a last-minute visit with the Arkansas Razorbacks. So does it change the recruitment? We got to discuss, okay? So first of all, listen, we've talked about Nate Ament a ton. I'm not going to spend too much time breaking down his game here. Really good player, though, man. Really good player. 6'8", 6'9", handles the ball, finishes at the rim, gets others involved, three-point shooter. And like I said, he's a little bit of a late bloomer. Listen, I don't want to put any label on any high school player, but there's NBA people that I've talked to that are like, listen, DeBanza is really good. Darren Peterson's really good. Cam Boozer is really good. Nate Ament might have the highest ceiling out of all of them because he is nowhere close to reaching his potential. So this is a special player, a special talent. And like I said, the recruitment has kind of been, all over the place, but I don't mean that necessarily in a negative way. When you blow up late, you haven't been a kid that, Cam Boozer's been recruited since he was probably in 7th, 8th grade. DeBanza's probably been recruited since 7th, 8th grade. Darren Peterson has been for sure. This was all new for Nate Ament. And so I said, take your time, take all your visits. And so we did it. Like I said, visited a bunch of schools, some of them in the top 5. I remember he took a visit to Texas. He took a visit to Notre Dame. And and the recruitment's been just kind of up in the air ever since then. Now, like I said, Louisville and Duke to me were always the leaders, and with good reason. Duke is Duke. It speaks for itself. Louisville, listen, Pat Kelsey's a beast. I respect the hell out of him. I would also say this, couple other things. One, they do have the 5-star point guard, Mikel Brown Jr. already committed, so kind of a nice piece to go along with them. And then listen, this fans take thing, I don't know how much it matters. I don't feel like it's nothing, though. So this fans take app is this app where school fans can contribute directly to NIL to their favorite players for their schools on the school's behalf. So in other words, Nate Ament set up an account and had 5 different accounts, right? And Louisville fans can donate money, and Kentucky fans can, and Tennessee fans can. Well, Louisville's running away with this thing. I mean, I looked it up the other day, like $80,000 raised that will go to Nate Ament if he commits. And so clearly the fan base wants him. Clearly there's mutual interest, etc. I'll tell you what, though, can't count out Cal because this Arkansas thing is coming. It is full speed ahead. It is a train on the tracks, and it is going quickly, okay? So, again, I think even 3-4 weeks ago, nobody really thought Arkansas was in the mix. But I said this when he cut his list to 5. I said, look, it's easy to say Arkansas isn't in the mix, but Coach Cal flew down on 2 separate occasions, and I think 2, maybe 3 separate occasions to see him in February, okay? And so why that mattered to me, Coach Cal ain't dumb, okay? If he knows he has no chance, he's not getting on that private jet, the PJ as the kids call it. He ain't getting on that private jet and flying down to see this kid, let alone a second and third time. What was noteworthy, the second or third time, the most recent one, Kenny Payne and Chin Coleman were with him. I know that everybody will tell you those guys don't know what they're doing either, and I think that's nonsense. I think they're both very good assistant coaches. Of course, Kentucky fans might have other feelings, but that's okay. But when you bring your 2 lead assistants with the head coach, I'm just here to tell you, I've been doing this a long time. I know well enough to know you don't think you have 0 chance when you bring your 2 lead assistants. And so it's felt like it's picking up steam, and now he's officially coming to Fayetteville. And listen, I'm not a believer that like the last visit is the most important. I've said this before with all these kids. Every visit is awesome, right? So like every time a kid visits anywhere, the kid immediately, that school becomes, they've made up a lot of ground. It's like, yeah, of course they did, because he just went there and it was awesome. No one's ever had a bad time on an official visit, okay? And so, to me, like, what does the visit mean? I don't know, but it's not nothing either, okay? Because the bottom line is, like, look, if he wasn't seriously considering Arkansas, 1, I don't think he'd even put him on the Final 5. 2, Coach Cal wouldn't visit. And then 3, and this is where it gets important, I don't think the kid would visit if he wasn't seriously taking Arkansas as well. And so this visit is happening. By the way, I think it's Kevin McPherson is the name of the guy, the Arkansas Hoop Scoop or something like that. I apologize if I got his name wrong, whatever. But he had an interview with Nate Ament where he's like, Coach Cal's the real deal. Coach Cal's made up a lot of ground. And here we are a week, probably 3 weeks before the commitment, and all of a sudden, Arkansas appears to be very much in the mix. Last thing I'll say, and Arkansas fans will tell you this, if it comes down to an NIL situation, I like that holster that John Calipari has as much as anybody else. I don't know that it will, but it's not going to be nothing, right? And we know Louisville has money. We know Kentucky has money. We know Tennessee has money. Duke has money. Ain't nobody got more money than Arkansas, so that'll be interesting. I should mention one other thing, by the way, because we talked about this last week, is it's at least maybe sort of worth noting the Cam Boozer situation with Duke. We talked about this. Cam Boozer, number 2-3 player in America, Carlos Boozer's son, committed to Duke over Miami in the fall. He is from Miami. Duke's lead assistant, his lead recruiter, Jay Lucas, is about to take the Miami job. And I will just tell you, there are whispers upon whispers that Jay Lucas is going to flip Cam Boozer and his brother Caden to Miami. Now, I still have my doubts. I still kind of believe, if you're those players, are you going to bet on a first-year head coach? I know they're from Miami. I know they almost went to Miami anyway. But the counter to that to me is, you pick Duke because it's freaking Duke. But I will say it's something to keep an eye on, because if somehow Jay Lucas does flip the Boozer twins, that becomes an interesting byproduct in this recruitment where Nate Ament is needed that much more at Duke. So that could be something to pay attention to as well. Tell you what, I think it is time for me to get out of here. A fun show today, man. There was so much. Tuesday night was just so much fun in the college basketball world. But now it's time for me to get out of here. If you are not subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod, this is what I need you to do. I need you to subscribe. You can do it on Apple. You can do it on Spotify. You can do it on Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. I think I said it, but subscribe to the YouTube channel. Do your boy Torres a solid. We're at almost 51,000 subscribers. I think we can get to 60 with ease before the end of the NCAA tournament, but cannot do it without your support. Time for me to go. Time for me to get out of here. Hear the dog barking in the background. She needs a walk. Shout out to Torn Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Redick, you F-head.